Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to talk about the movies. I'm your host, Josh Lindsay, and with me as always is our ever-trusting Jason Rugg.
Hey there.
And today is a special, unique episode of the Movie Proposal because once again we have our guest from the past, Christian Taylor, filmmaker, voiceover actress, and movie maker. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Very excited to have you.
Hi, everybody.
So today we are not going to follow our traditional format.
Can you explain what the Movie Proposal podcast means?
We pick a movie that we want to watch, something that's new to theaters or DVD or Netflix or something like that. And what's fun is the comments and feedback we've gotten has been people love hearing about ideas of movies to see or be reminded of movies that they've been meaning to see, or maybe show their kids or something like that. So if you're a fan of films and you just haven't gotten around to seeing everything you want to see and you need new ideas, this is a great podcast for that.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I think that my people should check that out.
So anyway, as I mentioned, we're not going to follow the traditional format today. We brought Christian on because she is a filmmaker in the midst of an awesome project. And it's a very special, unique project that we want her to talk about. And can I share the title of the movie?
Yeah, go right ahead.
All right, The Girl Who Wore Freedom. And so if you're a fan of World War II films, series like Band of Brothers, documentaries, things like that, you will really be turned on to this. And so maybe you could share with us, where are you at in this project? A little bit about the background, how you got started on this.
Sure, awesome. Thank you for having me on. It's really an awesome opportunity, I think, for me to let people know about what we're doing because it's incredibly unique, honestly. The Girl Who Wore Freedom is a documentary. It's a feature-length film. We do believe that it is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of the stories that we want to tell. The company that I founded was Normandy Project LLC, and our URL is normandystories.com, so you can check that out because we have many more than one story. This is just our first one because we feel it's the most compelling, eye-catching, interesting, and it is, to sum it up, our sort of log line is the story of World War II or the beginnings of World War II, the German occupation, the Allied liberation from the perspective of the French.
Which is interesting because, so it made me think of movies that I had seen, Saving Private Ryan, watching Band of Brothers and all those things, and it's from the perspective of the Americans.
Victors write history.
Right. And then what's interesting is recently, movies like Dunkirk and Darkest Hour have come out, which have shown a different perspective, the British. And so I thought this was fascinating that this is from the perspective of the French. And I've never been to France. I did study French in high school, but I can't speak it. And probably the most education I've gotten about the French perspective of Americans have come from The Simpsons.
That's terrible.
And how much the French hate Americans and they're snooty and all that kind of stuff. And so,
this isn't Miss Hoover's class.
I do not know this, mademoiselle. Where would you speak?
What's happening? Where am I?
Sacre bleu! En français.
So watching clips of how much the French appreciate, to this day, generations appreciate what Americans did. It's fascinating to me.
Yeah, you're jumping ahead a little bit because that is exactly what we're doing. And my experience with the French or with France paralleled yours. But when I got to France, I was completely surprised by what I experienced. Now, I got there because my son, Hunter, is in the Army, and he was in the 101st, which is a very infamous unit. If you know about Band of Brothers, you'll recognize that. He was in the 506th, and he was a Currahee. And he was in Dealer Company, but Easy Company was also in the 506th.
Okay.
So he sort of got back from Afghanistan, did some meritorious stuff, and was rewarded with the opportunity to represent the 101st in the D-Day ceremonies in France. And when I heard this, I was like, D-Day ceremonies in France? I've never heard of this.
Right.
What is that? And so I decided, I was going to go and tag along. My son Jacob was graduating from high school. I took him with me because I had never really traveled overseas before. This was a complete adventure to me. We flew to Paris, and I was there for a day, and quite frankly, the Parisians that I met, even people will say, well, it's different in Paris, but the Parisians I met were incredibly gracious to us. We took a train to Cannes, and then we rented a car and drove to Normandy. And in the first hour that I was there, we were lost. I didn't know where to find Hunter. He didn't know where he was. And I finally saw this American Jeep with some GIs in it. Okay. And I thought, well, I mean, I'll just follow them. So we were following them until their car broke down. And then I was like, oh, crud. So I just stopped behind him. I'm like, Jacob, get out and go ask them if we're headed to the right place. So Jacob gets out. I see him talking to them. He comes back and gets in the car and is like, Mom, they're all French. They don't speak any English. And I was like, what? Where have we landed? And so all of these French people were dressed up in American 1944 garb. There were soldiers and army people dressed like that, but there were also people dressed as civilians from the 40s. And so as I got closer and closer to this parachute drop where I was going, it felt like I had been in a time capsule. I get out of my car, I hear the Andrews Sisters playing and a bunch of, swing music, and I'm seeing all these French people dressed like we were in the 1940s. Fortunately, I found Hunter, and in about 5 minutes of finding Hunter, this woman walks up to me and says, "May I take a picture?" She was beautiful. Actually, she said it to Hunter, and I was like, "Ooh, I'm his mom. I'll take the picture." Of course, my single son, not married. I'm thinking, So anyway, I took the picture, and then she says, "This jacket was given to my mother in 1944 by an American GI." And I was like, "Are you kidding me?"
Wow.
Is your mother still alive? And she's like, oh, yes, of course. And she introduced me to her mother and to her father, Danny and Jean-Marie. And I suddenly found out, I asked them, were they alive? Do they remember? They were alive. Do you remember what happened? She was 5, he was 7, and they had clear memories of what it was like in the German occupation.
Wow.
So that was my first experience with France, and it was totally different than we would have thought.
So is that when the movie idea was born, or when did
Not
the movie?
then.
Okay.
Because we then said goodbye. We went to 2 other ceremonies, and the third ceremony, I get to my spot where I can see what Hunter's doing, and I look to my right, and there they are again. And we're like, oh, hello. We were old friends by this point. And they basically, at that point, adopted us for the next 3 or 4 days. We were their American family, as they said. And they took us to every event. Well, what I learned was that this young woman, her mother, Danny, she was 5 during the occupation. Her parents befriended GIs, and those GIs, like this happened everywhere, all over France, gave them all sorts of things. A jacket that they had. They gave them pineapples. They gave them gum and chocolate and candy that they'd never had before. And they gave them discarded parachutes because these French people had been occupied. I don't know if most people know this. Do you know how long? How many years?
5?
Close. It was 4.
Okay.
The Germans went in 1939 and sort of took everything over. France capitulated, even though they tried to fight back at first. But these villages in Normandy were occupied from September 1939.
So for something to happen for that long, you just, in the beginning, you would think, well, there's got to be hope, we can get rescued. But then go on for years like
4
that.
4 years. That's like your whole time in high school.
Right.
It really is a long time when you think about it. And what was so difficult, there were several things during the occupation that were so hard. One, their actions were constantly monitored. So they had to carry papers with them, and everywhere they wanted to walk in the village, they had to show their papers, and they had to give a reason for why they were going different places. And they were searched. So that was number one. Everything was rationed. Everything. Including fabric and shoes and, sugar and, just everything. So they had very little. And there were just a lot of people, any little thing they would do, the Germans would put them in work camps and make them do all the work, digging all of the defenses so that the Americans or the Allies couldn't come in. Right. So, it was just a terrible existence for those 4 years. And so that is an important thing to understand because, I can talk about that later, but I didn't know how long they had been occupied and didn't understand the impact that probably had on them. All of them were so passionate about Americans, they wanted to talk to us, they wanted to hear everything about us. They take photographs and get autographs from any American soldier that they meet during that whole time. And American sends over representatives from all the units that liberated them on D-Day, well, in the early days of World War II. The Canadians do it as well as the English. And now Germans have been invited back to these commemoration ceremonies.
Oh, wow.
It's incredibly interesting.
So you come back home after that, yes?
Yes, I was there for 3 or 4 days. And again, let me just say one other thing. Those parachutes that were given to Danny and her family, her mother used those parachutes to make shirts for her, aprons for her, and then her mother decided to make a very special dress. And it's a dress that resembled the American flag.
So was it made from an American flag, or did they make it to look like an American flag?
Yes, it was a red parachute, which I didn't even know existed, but that delivered machinery, and a white parachute, which is a reserve parachute. The paratroopers jumped in with their camouflage parachutes. And so those parachutes were discarded, given to the Boucherie or the Patrice family, and her mother made this dress to resemble an American flag. And she was selected to be in the very first commemoration ceremony in 1945. So that dress is currently in the Utah Beach Museum. So she knows everyone that owns that, museum. She took us in. We didn't have to pay. We just kind of walked in. She gave us a tour. I was just blown away by how kind these people were, how much they seemed to love Americans, how grateful they were for their freedom. And it just felt like they were in love. The way they treated the veterans that weekend was nothing short of like almost hero worship. The soldiers, the modern day soldiers, never paid for a thing. They were always treated to food and drinks and everything for 3 weeks. That was even more so for the veterans. Kids in Normandy save up their money during the year to help bring veterans back to thank them. They are so passionate about thanking these veterans. They put them up, they pay for their flights, they feed them, it's incredible. And I kept thinking as I got back, why? Like, what is this incredible obsession, passion? People there save up their money year round and they invest it in all this real American war stuff, Jeeps, troop transport vehicles, bicycles, clothes, military, and then they spend their times in reenactment groups, training for reenactments. When I asked people why these French people did this, they said, because we want the veterans to come back and to feel at home, and we want to show them that we've dedicated our lives to thanking them. I'd never seen anything like that before. It was incredibly compelling. And of course, I said to this family, who now is my French family, if you're ever in America, if you ever want to come, you can, come and stay with me. You have a place, you're totally welcome.
So they did.
So I got a call not long later on Facebook. That's how they talk with us. I'm coming to America for 3 weeks.
All right.
I will be there at Christmas. So we got to know them during this 4-day period in June. And then Flo, the younger daughter, came and spent 3 weeks with us at Christmas, and the rest is history. That's where I just learned so much more about survivor stories and what people do. And I thought, we as Americans have, A, no idea that this is going on over there.
Correct.
And B, we think we understand the concepts of freedom and liberty.
Right.
But I saw the effects of what freedom looked like.
How much they appreciate it.
How much they appreciate it. And I realized we take all that for granted because we've never really been occupied or, had to live under that kind of oppressive rule to really appreciate what freedom feels like. So beginning of 2017, I started doing my research.
Is this the biggest thing you've taken on so far?
Oh, no question.
Okay.
And I've had to invest a lot of my own money. I've been in this industry long enough to experience a bunch of different perspectives and aspects of it and work with other people who trained me sort of in producing. And so I've sort of sat on the sidelines for a while, learning a whole bunch of stuff, and figured I'd known enough that perhaps with a group of the right people, I could pull something off.
So my wife Angie is working with you
Yes,
sideline, and
she's my assistant.
Yes, and the thing that she always talks about, and I know this too, is how great you are at getting people involved. Like she's amazed, like where does Christian find all these people? All these new people are just showing up and they're doing this for the project, doing that for the project,
To
and
volunteer.
So forth. Right.
Yeah, it's
so
crazy.
you're great at bringing people into this. So maybe talk to us about where you're at right now with the project in terms of the timeline,
Yeah. So I truly would not be anywhere if it wasn't for a host of people who are suffering a lot for this project, namely my husband and my son who live at home. I would never have been able to do any of this if it was not for Jeremy. That's the biggest support I get right there is from him. And then I met a whole nother group of people. And when I showed them the project that I was working on and what I was thinking about, they caught the vision.
Sure.
And this group of people, they are from a company called Reverse Negative in Skokie. The owners are Terry Junn and Corey Lillard. Terry happens to be married to a French woman, speaks French, and has a French guy on his crew. And so it was a super good fit. They were passionate about that. I still don't know, except for the grace of God. So, for example, I asked Flo to check out this place called the AVA, which is American Veterans Association in France, because I knew they knew a lot of veterans. Flo, who's now the assistant producer in France, she called AVA, and this woman answered. She talked to her about it, and Flo called me back. She said, I think she's American. And I was like, really? So I emailed her. She was, in fact, American. And the next day, she was coming to America, an hour away from where I live.
Oh, wow.
So I ended up meeting her and spent a whole day with her in Michigan City, Indiana, talking about this project. She saw the vision and came on as an associate producer and has been volunteering my time, along with Flo, to work everything out that I need in France. And so time after time, things like this have happened where people have it's been a perfect fit. They want to be part of what we're doing. And a lot of it is they feel like we need to remember our history.
Sure. Yeah.
Our younger kids, if I ask them what D-Day is, they don't even know. Sorry, Jason, I know you know. Mostly because I beat it into your head. No, I'm sure you're just more of the knowledgeable ones. But Alex Henson, who is a soldier from the 101st, went to France last summer. I don't know if I told you this, but when I asked him about his first impressions of being in France, he said, I was blown away. I was standing there at a ceremony holding the American flag, and this elderly French woman came up to me afterwards with tears in her eyes to thank me for her freedom.
Wow.
And he's like, I didn't do anything. It was just my unit. He said, but then I get on an airplane, and I'm flying back to America, and this millennial American girl asked me where I was. I told her Normandy. She asked why. I said part of the D-Day ceremonies. And she said, well, what's D-Day? And I'm finding that a lot as I talk to younger generations. They don't know what D-Day is. They don't know where Normandy is. And so they don't really understand what happened and what was sacrificed over there. I think there are a lot of people like that on this project that feel the same way, and they want us to capture these French survivor stories and veteran stories before it's too late and be able to pass those on to younger generations.
So you've mentioned... there's a cost to this, right? And there's, how you get this done. So can you talk about, when it comes to actually making the movie, what's next and how can people get involved and, where can they go to learn about following the project and participating at some level?
Yeah. So let me just explain about the whole cost thing. As with anything else, it's basically starting a new business. And so my voiceover business and acting business, Taylor Productions, has been funding this project, as well as my husband has helped out a little bit as well. So I sort of started that. Then I've had to ask a lot of people to volunteer in hopes of deferred pay, once we raise money. And you can decide as a filmmaker how you're going to fund your film. Traditionally, you get investors, and investors, when they invest their money, they want to see a return. And so there's a lot of how you have to show you can make a return for your investors, and there's this fiduciary responsibility and obligation and a ton of paperwork. Traditionally, documentaries don't make a ton of money. And so I knew as a first-time female filmmaker, I might be a tough sell, to be able to sell this to Netflix or Amazon or, History Channel or whatever, because I'm just not known. This is my first feature film. So we decided to go the donation route in hopes of funding this film. And we needed to partner with a nonprofit to help us do that. So we searched around at all these different reasons, or all these different options. A lot of times people will fund movies through Kickstarter. You've seen that a lot, Indiegogo. They all take a pretty good percentage of whatever you raise, and oftentimes if you don't raise enough, you don't get your money. We identified this incredible partner called Hatch Fund. And Hatch Fund, I think of it as like Kickstarter's nonprofit cousin. So Hatch Fund is a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping artists. And so what they do is you have to apply to be part of, to be sponsored by them, or for them to be your fiscal sponsor. Once they approve your whole project, think it's great, they then create a space for you on their website for you to be able to talk about your project and begin to ask for support. So that's what we did. We have a Hatch Fund page where people can go and read about our project and our budget and our timeline and what our hopes for, who the cast and crew are. We have perks there for people that want to donate. If you decide, Josh, you want to donate $100,000, you get to come to Normandy with us.
Yes.
And you get to be a reenactor in one of our reenactments. You can be an actor over in France dressed up as a World War II guy.
Done deal. Let me just talk to Angie and then
Yeah, you get to be part of the crew. And you get to meet a lot of the Band of Brothers actors, actually. We're going to be working with them this summer. So
this keeps getting better.
Yeah, it's truly, that is, of course, there's a something like that at the $50,000 level and something at the $100,000 level. But smaller perks are, Danny has gone over and picked a whole bunch of sand from Utah Beach and packaged it for us and signed it. And she's knitted scarves with the Girl Who Wore Freedom labels on it.
Wow.
And she's made these little doilies with Girl Who Wore Freedom label on it. So there's some pretty cool perks at the, higher levels. But we also are so thankful for donations, no matter what they are, $5, $10, $20, whatever. So we hope to raise our budgets $300,000. And that will cover everything from pre-production through principal photography, through post-production. And then the great thing about this is we have already been asked to premiere our film in Normandy in 2019 at the Dead Man Corner Museum, the D-Day Experience.
Oh, wow.
And that's huge because it's this huge theater, and we haven't even made the film yet. So they still want us to premiere it there. But also, we're entering the World War II film festival in Normandy. And if we win the documentary category, we will premiere at that film festival. And what's so exciting is that it's the 75th anniversary of D-Day. That's why we're trying to get this done.
2019?
2019.
Oh,
we have
wow.
to have this film cut and done November 15th.
Of this year, of 2018.
Yeah. So our timeline is we're raising the money now to take a team over to France for 3 weeks. And we will be there filming French survivor interviews with World War II veterans. We'll film the D-Day ceremonies themselves, parachute drops, parades, dances, dinners. And then we'll film reenactments that French reenactors put together every year. And then we'll come home. We'll interview a few other veterans, American veterans here, and put our film together and submit it to different distributors to hopefully pick it up and buy it, and then we'll premiere it in France next summer.
That's exciting. So what kind of challenges besides finding raising support and that sort of, what other challenges have you encountered in making a film?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking that. There have been many numerous challenges. One of the biggest ones, honestly, is that A, I'm a first-time filmmaker. B, I'm a female. I am telling a story in a man's world. So we've done a lot of research. We have yet to find a female American director or producer that has done a story on World War II. I challenge anyone who's listening, please, if you know of any or if you can find any, let us know, because I really am curious where I fit in that hierarchy. You know, are they out there and I can't find them? Or am I one of 10? Am I one of 5? Or am I the very first female filmmaker in America to make a story on World War II? That would be really cool. So I have found difficulty actually sort of breaking through this glass ceiling. A lot of the World War II films who have access to veterans, who have access to the good actors, they're all men. And I have tried reaching out to all of them. I've tried reaching out to Tom Hanks in a very special way, even have a connection with him that gave him a video I made for him. I've tried reaching out to Gary Sinise and Tom Brokaw and who else? Gary Getzman, Colin Hanks, all these people that I know are passionate about World War II, Steven Spielberg stuff. I've tried reaching out to them in Twitter, emails, just all these different stuff, and nobody responds to me. And I've tried reaching out to veterans organizations and things like that. Nobody responds to me. I feel like if I was a man telling a World War II
I'm sure
story,
if I wrote Steven Spielberg, he's not going to respond to me either. So don't.
I know.
Don't take it too personally.
But I do still think it's harder for women to do stuff like this.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And I mean, you're pioneering something.
Well, and even think about this. I'm not a military person. I am not a veteran. I don't function in these typical male societies. Mm-hmm. And so I am on the outside trying to get in. And what's interesting is I think a woman needs to tell this story. And here's why. I don't think anybody has told the French perspective before, because I don't think they've seen it with different eyes. So when I went over there and I'm watching what the Americans did for the French, I'm not necessarily looking at all the numbers of the wounded or the dead or those who survived. I saw the love relationship. And so we have said in all of our marketing materials that this is a love story. Not your conventional love story, but it's a love story nonetheless. And it's a love story that only one lover is aware of. So the French are passionately in love with these American veterans and the soldiers and us Americans. I was just a normal, average American. And America does not even know that this love affair is going on. And I want America to know this. We have this languishing lover over here that really would like us, I mean, the fact that, let me tell you this, when I went over there and talked to these French people, and I said, I'm just a stay-at-home mom that really, I know I can tell this story in a film. I don't want to tell my story. I don't want to tell Hollywood's story. I want to tell your story. And when I talk to those French people like that, they cry. Because nobody has asked them their side of things before. And they want to thank the Americans. They want to talk about the Americans. But it's the first time anybody has turned to them and said, tell us what it was like for you. And one man started to cry and said, I've had this in my head for 73 years and I've never told anyone.
Wow.
The mayor of Sainte-Marie-du-Mont, Charles de Vallevielle, who's also the president of the Utah Beach Museum, when I asked him about the Utah Beach port. It was a temporary port that I can't even research on American, internet stuff. He became very emotional because nobody had ever asked him that before. So I think the fact being a woman does give me a completely different perspective. And I think we need to hear that perspective.
So The Girl Who Wore Freedom, where can we go to watch the trailer and other things?
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for asking that. So NormandyStories.com is our hub for everything. That is where our trailers live. We have one in English and one in French. The French trailer, by the way, is actually Danny talking.
Oh, okay.
So that's cool. And that's where all of our cast and crew are and the support that we have from everyone. And who our French partners are over there. We have anyone that we could ever want. The site also just flips to French with one little push of a button. So NormandyStories.com is kind of a hub. And then you can go to our Facebook page. That's another really big hub. It's The Girl Who Wore Freedom on Facebook. And there we're constantly putting up new content. We're giving people history of Normandy, of World War II, important people, and the people in our film. We're also on Instagram and Twitter, putting up sort of different content there. We're on YouTube. And the biggest place I would love people to go is hatchfund.org, searching projects for the girl who wore freedom. And you will see we've raised about, right now, I think it's $16,200, something like that. Our target for this campaign is $150,000. So we'd love anybody to make a donation if you can. Even a small donations would help. But we really would love somebody who has a philanthropic heart and has means to help. If they would consider larger donations, that would be incredibly encouraging to us. We did have somebody donate 3 airline tickets today. Thank you, Nora Whalen.
Wow.
That was exciting. We need 7 more. And truthfully, I think, if a corporation would be a great partner, there's several out there we've thought about. And it is a tax-deductible donation. We would love it if people would do that. We are going to start doing live things this summer when we get to France, like Periscope feeds and Facebook Live, and people can follow us along on our journey. And you guys can learn what's going on in France, in the first weeks of June.
So I went to the Facebook page and saw the trailer there.
Yeah.
And that's my favorite thing is I'm a big fan of trailers, period. That's what I do for a hobby.
How did ours come out?
I love it. I really, it's great. I mean,
Guess what?
What?
I wrote it.
Nice job.
Thanks. I'm not even a writer. I just I felt it. And so I wrote it.
Well, no, it really, I thought it was fantastic. And it makes me want to, see the movie. And it's interesting that, the movie doesn't even exist yet.
It does in my mind.
Right.
I've been watching it in my mind now for like 2 years. So I can't wait. So many exciting things have been happening along this journey, surprising and wonderful and heartwarming. And we're constantly documenting that on our Facebook page. So I would love it if people would follow. We're at 700 likes right now.
All right.
I would love to get over 1,000. And we would just love to spread the word. So if you go to the Facebook page and like the girl who wore freedom, please share it with your friends and ask them to join in the cause. And just think about this. If you guys decide to jump on board, like you're on the ground level of doing something really incredible, I think that we could win an Oscar. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding.
No, of course you could.
I truly could do that. And then it would be all of these small donors that helped us build this foundation, or people that liked our Facebook page and spread the word. And
but just remember, it's still an honor to be nominated, right? So
that's right.
If you don't win,
you know
okay.
what? It's an honor for me to get this far. I never honestly thought I would, and I consider it a miracle. And I thank God for that every day.
So The Girl Who Wore Freedom, Christian Taylor, check it out. Thank you for being on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
And